And a very good afternoon. You're very welcome along to our final opportunity to meet some of the candidates contesting the Midlands Northwest constituency. The constituency, as we're all aware now at this point, most importantly, includes Donegal, Cavan, Galway, Kildare, Leitrim, Longford, Louth, Mayo, Meath, Monaghan, Roscommon, Sligo, Westmeath and the city of Galway. There are 5 seats available, 27 candidates. We have the remaining 4 candidates to speak to today. This was all done by a random draw. We'll be hearing from Dr. Gerry Waters, who's an independent, Margaret Maguire, who's running for Ireland First, Fergal Landy of the Labour Party, Pauline O'Reilly of the Green Party, Nina Carberry of Fine Gael had been invited. She said no. One of 3 that said no, another from Fianna Fáil, another from Sinn Féin, because they're not canvassing in this area, so you can draw from that what you wish. We will say good morning to our candidates, or good afternoon as they're listed here in front of me, and ask them to talk a little bit about themselves, I suppose, in a minute or two, and why they believe you should vote for them. And we'll say good morning first to Dr. Gerry Waters, a former GP who is running as an independent. Good morning to you, Gerry. Thank you very much for joining us.
Yeah, thanks very much for inviting me. I'm the only doctor in Ireland ever to be struck off the medical register for refusal to go along on conscientious grounds of anything. I refuse to go along with the COVID scam, the pathogenicity scam, which it was, and every doctor in the country knew that. I refuse to go along with the masking, the lockdowns, the destruction of the industry, and I refuse to go along with giving the vaccine, which is now causing major vaccine problems, major morbidity and death. When I was in college in the 1970s, I'm 74 now, so I go back a long, long way. With the people who are now represent the Greens were pushing the global cooling. There was going to be glaciers down to the Empire State Building. They got it wrong. They then switched to global warming. They carried on the hoax of global warming, the ideology hoax of global warming for 30 years. And now, when the planet didn't agree with the heating, they switched to climate change.
And if people vote for you, though, Gerry, if you don't mind me asking, what do you promise for the people of Midlands Northwest if elected into the EU? I mean, obviously you're reflecting on your record there, but just people might want to know what you might deliver for them or promise to deliver for them if elected.
Well, I'm not going to make promises. I'm not going to be like these people pretending that they're going to solve all the problems. The only promise I make is that I will be truthful, I'll be honest, I'll be courageous, and I will face up to the lies, the ideological lies of most politicians. I have to admit, I'm not a politician. I don't intend to be a politician, but I've got contempt for many, many politicians who live a lie. So what am I going to do? I'm going to tell the truth from a sound scientific basis and try and stop the next scam, which is going to be avian flu, H5N1. This is the next one that's going to push on the people.
And we might move on to that. Thank you for that. Margaret Maguire of Ireland First. Why should people vote for you?
Good afternoon, and I mirror Gerry's comments there. Thanks very much for having us on. We're being barred. People, with my opinion, are being barred very much from the mainstream media, so people can't hear what we have to say. So I thank you for that. Okay, why should people vote for me? I think this election in particular is a very decisive election. It's the election of a generation, perhaps even longer, maybe even since the formation of the state, to be honest. I think the people of Ireland, along with the people in other member states, have got a decision to make now. We know the way things are going within the EU. We can either vote for more of the same, which is, elect more legacy party MEPs, or we can vote for somebody that's going to challenge the narrative and perhaps, enact change or certainly petition for change along with other nationalists within other EU member states. So I will.
So are you saying,
I'm a nationalist.
Will you, Margaret, if elected, you will align yourself, will you, to what's been described by other candidates as sort of more right-leaning elements across Europe? You want to form an alliance there?
Yes, absolutely. We're looking at the ECR and the ID groups.
Okay, we'll come back to you and tease out. Sorry,
yeah, okay.
There's
No
a
problem.
slight delay, Margaret, and it might sound like I'm speaking over you. Not my intention. I think your signal's just not fantastic, but we appreciate it nonetheless. Fergal, Landy of the Labour Party, I suppose more about you, and if you take any issues with what anyone else says, we can sort of tease that out over the course of the next 50-odd minutes, but just want to give you an opportunity to lay your stall out, Fergal.
Thanks, Greg. So my name is Fergal Landy. I'm new to politics in the sense that I haven't contested any election before, but I'm not new to public service. I have over 20 years of experience in public services. I started out as a child protection social worker, working with children and families who were encountering a lot of challenges. But I quickly, I suppose, within a couple of years of doing that type of work, I had a sense that I wanted to be more involved in trying to deal with the systemic issues, particularly poverty and inequality that those families were encountering and that were exacerbating their situation. So I moved into more community development type role at that time in what was the Health Board and then the HSC. I also then moved into research in the University of Galway on prevention and early intervention, evidence-based prevention and early intervention, and was involved in a large-scale kind of public service reform delivery into TUSLA, the Child and Family Agency, where I was a regional manager for prevention, partnership and family support. That included covering Donegal, and worked with a lot of great people in Donegal on that. And now I work as the CEO of the Family Resource Centre National Forum, which again brings me into contact with a lot of people in Donegal, because we have 10 family resource centres in Donegal, and I would be up there from time to time meeting with them. So that's kind of what's brought me now to feeling that the skills I developed over that time of advocacy, of collaboration, of change, positive, constructive change, which I think the EU on occasion has delivered in Ireland for many years, and has the opportunity to deliver much, much more positive change, particularly I think if we adopt a more social democratic position within the EU. And I would be, as a member of the Labour Party, part of the Socialists and Democrats grouping, quite a different grouping to the ones referred previously in the European Parliament. And that's the kind of positive, inclusive, constructive approach that I would propose to bring if I was elected.
And Senator Pauline O'Reilly, why do you want to move from the Senate to Brussels?
Thank you very much, Greg. Well, I've been on the show previously, but I'll just remind people of who I am. So I topped the polls in Galway to become a councillor. I have been a senator for the last 4 years. I'm chair of the Green Party as an all-Ireland party. One of my roles is to support people to run for local election for us and for European election. And I can say that last time we had 83 candidates running for us in local elections. Now we have 130. So there is a groundswell of support now for what we've been achieving over the last number of years in terms of green actions. The climate collapse and nature collapse that we are experiencing now on a global scale, it's absolutely key that we get Green MEPs back over the line. It is under attack in Europe. What the progress that we've made, we had a huge number of MEPs for the Greens elected in 2019. We had 2 from Ireland, none from Midlands Northwest. I'm hoping that based on my own record in politics, that people will put their faith and trust in me to deliver. We know that nature restoration, 2 of the 4 MEPs in Midlands Northwest, and in fact the only 2 across the country, voted against nature restoration law. There are elements across Europe that will stop at nothing in order to see the progress that we've made go backwards.
Just to be clear, Senator, you would have voted in favour of the nature restoration law?
Absolutely, absolutely. And what I would say to people is that there is misinformation being spread in relation to nature. We only have 1/10 of our wild Irish salmon left in our rivers. The barn owl is under threat of extinction in Ireland. the native Irish honeybee is under threat of extinction. We are going to go backwards as a country if we don't get this right.
Mm-hmm.
And I know, I canvass all of the time, I know that it really matters to people. And what kind of action am I talking about? I'm talking about the 700 homes this week alone who have put solar panels on their roofs. I'm talking about the 700% increase in people taking rural public transport since we came into government and provided more services. I'm talking about the people who are now signing up to organics, Donegal topping the list of organic farmers, as I've said previously.
Okay. Well, we're
Island
sort of
Radio.
getting into debating the issues here now, so we might move on from that. Dr. Waters, shaking your head as soon as as soon as anything referencing the climate is mentioned.
The problem is that there's a shift there. There's a three-card trick shift from nature. Everybody agrees that nature should be looked after. Everybody agrees that the salmon and the fishery should be looked after. Everybody agrees that the Irish waters should not be overfished. Everybody agrees that, but that is not the premise on which the Green Party is based. And the premise on which the Green Party is based is the fact that carbon dioxide, methane, and now nitrogen, the most recent introduction into the triad of enemies of the people, has been introduced. The fact of the matter is, every scientist in the world knows that the original science done to claim that carbon dioxide and methane cause global warming is flawed. It was done in what they call a closed system. And the Earth is an open system. There's energy going in and going out. And the vibration of the covalent bond in the carbon dioxide molecule that takes in energy for 1/10,000th of a second and releases it again into the universe is all rubbish. And every scientist knows that.
Okay.
Every
scientist
knows that.
I'll bring the other two guests in, but Pauline O'Reilly, Gerry Waters out, just attacking the fundamental basis on which our understanding of climate change and following on from that, the climate crisis is built.
Look, I'm not going to argue
You can't.
on this. I'm not going to argue on this point. The last time I was at a hustings, I was actually screamed at by Gerry.
Yes, you were challenged. You were challenged.
Okay. Well, Gerry, we'll be respectful.
I'm asking you to debate it.
I have to have people, including Fergal, support me in leaving the room.
Okay.
So I will
That's
say
ridiculous.
I will say that there is a problem that is happening across Europe, and people need to be very aware that the progress that we've made is going to go backwards unless we're
Thanks
really
be to God. Thanks be to God.
Okay.
Because you are criminal.
Gerry, well, we'll certainly not make those kind of accusations, and this will only work if
but
we.
It is criminal.
I understand that, but this will only work
to destroy farming.
I hear you. Well, we're going to speak about farming and fishing, because up here that's going to be one of the key determiners as to why people vote. As it relates to, if people want to say my scientist says this and my scientist says that, I can't get involved.
No, all scientists know
Margaret
this.
Maguire, what is your view on climate? Do you recognise that Ireland needs to be doing its bit, particularly, I suppose, in rural Ireland, to protect the environment and the world's climate?
I believe that rural Ireland is already doing its bit and more than its bit. With regards to climate change, I think there's a lot of alarmism out there. And I don't believe that, taxing the most vulnerable in our country, in rural Ireland, out of existence, basically, is going to improve things to any great degree at all. I do believe that we have to mind where we live. I do believe we have to mind our environment. But I think Ireland is already a place that does that. And I don't believe that all these taxes, all these regulations that we're having to go through, I really do not think that is the way to go.
Fergal, your views on this before we move on.
Thanks, Greg. Just because it came up there as a point of information, I mean, the debate that was referenced there was over. So I think it's a bit like a match when the referee blows the final whistle, you leave the pitch and everything is left at that. So there was a situation.
It's more important than that, Fergal.
I'm being interrupted again.
Yeah,
there was a situation,
but Gerry, we
there
just
was a
need people to be able
situation
to
where
be
I
heard.
felt it necessary to come between Gerry and Pauline, and I'll do it again if necessary, because I think it was extremely inappropriate the way that Gerry was shouting very loudly at Pauline.
Okay, but we'll not
previous-
debate that
challenging
debate.
her
We'll
through
not
a
debate that
debate.
debate, as I will sit
Yeah,
there.
on climate
Okay.
change, I am totally agree with the way that Pauline has described the challenge of climate change, and my policy and the Labour Party's policy is to cooperate with addressing the twin challenges of climate change and biodiversity. Maybe the slightly different angle is around how we incorporate that or reconcile that with a social justice approach to ensure that small and medium sized farmers in rural Ireland are not asked to unduly wear any burden in relation to regulation, or certainly that they are supported and empowered and resourced to change practices where necessary. And the same applies in small and medium towns and urban settings where people who are already experiencing income inequality and poverty, then we make sure that that's not exacerbated by the cost by fuel poverty or the inadequacies of their houses in terms of insulation and so on and so forth. So I think there are many ways that we can cooperate with communities to live more sustainably. And actually, whether you can talk about the science till the cows come home, it's a good thing to live more sustainably. So I think people should be supported to do that.
A lot of votes up for grabs here in the farming and fishing industries. Many jobs reliant on them in the Northwest, and of course, two industries that are not just about business but also, the cultural fabric of this area. Margaret Maguire. People listening, considering voting you, they might agree with certain elements of what your party stands for, but they will also want to know that they have a voice out there on wider issues facing society. How would you advocate on behalf of fishermen and women and our farming community?
Well, I believe that, first of all, with regards to fishing, I believe we're being regulated out of existence again. I believe it's very undemocratic. I'll give you an example here. After Brexit, the EU and the UK brokered a deal, and obviously the UK took their quota off with them when they left the EU. So the quota for the rest of the EU was reduced by that amount. We paid for that alone. Our fishing quota was reduced by 25%. In order to balance this quota out. None of the other member states had their quota reduced at all. Our quota alone was reduced by 21%. Following on from that, there was other EU member states that didn't actually take their quota in 2021, and this led to 43,000 tonnes of fish being left in Irish waters. Now, those 43,000 tonnes, we were not allowed to take. We were not allowed to fish them. And I just find that absolutely ridiculous, that we are not allowed to take fish from our own water that nobody else wants. And this alone could have created 2,500 jobs for our fishing industry. I believe it's over-regulated. I do not believe the EU should be able to tell us how many fish we can take from our own waters. That's my
Pauline O'Reilly. Just on the fishing the fishing industry, Ireland does certainly seem to be getting a very raw deal across the union.
Yeah, I think that this is a legacy issue, and I think it's a massive challenge for Ireland. And the fishing industry has been on its knees for some time, and it's not an easy one to resolve. And look, I mean, Charlie McConlogue is the local minister here and deals with this on a daily basis and would know better.
But the bottom line is that decisions are made in Europe, Pauline.
They are. No, they absolutely are. But remember that who we send over is one of over 700 MEPs. And we'll have 14 MEPs, Ireland. We have to work together, I believe, very much. And some don't when it comes to the environment, some don't when it comes to other issues. But I believe that you have to be at the table and work together with other political
parties.
I hear the argument, in order to get the best.
When I hear the argument of the proportion that we have in 14 out of 760 or 50 or 40. There's different numbers bandied out there. But we are talking about 12% of European waters here, you know, so we always use the lower number, which is our representation. Well, let's not talk about what how we should be represented in terms of how much of the waters we have. You know, do we not need to stand up a bit more for ourselves rather than saying, you know, we are the kippers, not the blue whale?
We have, I mean, like our water area is 7 times our land area. So it is disproportionate. Now, one thing that is doing is working with other coastal nations. And there is you know, there's a number of countries working together to try and get that strength in numbers, because alone Ireland can't do it. And I would argue alone and outside Europe, Ireland is also going to be on the fringes economically. So we do have to do what we can and work together in Europe.
Right, Gerry Waters, you say you're not making any promises. Can you give any words of comfort for the fishing industry and what you might do for them if in
As
Brussels?
a point of information, Fergal seems to remember the event with the Irish farmers differently. It was Pauline who attacked me with my crackpot ideas on my understanding
I'm not going to
of
lie
science.
to you. I'm not going to lie to you, but the audience listening to this debate, and I don't know who brought it up, are really not interested in that. And I mean that with absolute respect.
It was Pauline that brought it up. It was Pauline that brought it up.
I'll...
And Fergal chose to defend her on a point of information. But let's tell the truth. Now, I know this is difficult for socialists and communists to actually tell the truth. But sorry, what was your question?
The people will want to know. You said you won't make any promises, but the people will want to know: do you have an interest or an attitude or a plan to support the fishing industry in this country if elected?
Absolutely, 100%. There's absolutely no. I've spoken to fishermen over the years in my capacity as a doctor, and I know for a fact that the Irish fishing industry is very, very unfairly treated, and fishermen from Killybegs are telling me that they can't take tuna, that if a tuna get caught in their net and it's dead, they have to throw it back. They can't bring it into the port. Like, this is a crazy concept that they can't even take a steak off the tuna. So I've been told that they'll be fined if they took a dead tuna out of their nets and brought it back into port. This is a crazy rule. And the people who have been there and the political parties have in effect been the cause of this over the years. It's called weakness. It's called lack of courage. This is what it is. And the political parties, they talk about the numbers that are representing or are going forward or running in these elections. The reason for that is that people now see through the politicians for their despicable treatment of the people.
Why do you want to become if you are so frustrated with the system and those who operate within it, why are you campaigning to become one of them?
Because I'm honest and I'm truthful, and I believe I can handle these people. Because of my age, my experience, my education, I can handle these people. I can take them on, and I can force them to actually look at the truth. Most things in life now, the cons that are being pulled on the people are based on science. The PCR test, the COVID hoax, what I say about climate. Most of this is based on science, and you need somebody with a very, very strong scientific background. I did chemistry in UCG in the mid-70s, and I have read and watched the progress through my life as a doctor.
Okay.
So what I'm saying is, I will come on and defend the people from a scientific point of view, and not insult people, and not jump down and refer to them as crackpots, as Pauline did to me.
Okay, Fergal, Landy, what's your message for the fishing community here? I don't believe I've come to you on this issue yet. Sorry.
No, you haven't, Greg. No,
go ahead,
Fergal. Landy with an A, sorry.
What am I saying? Did I say Landy?
Yeah, I think you did. No,
I might have I'm going to blame Zoom, Mr. Landy. Continue.
Much of a muchness. Look, apologies. I didn't make it up to Killybegs for the hustings, but I think this is one area, and I've spoken on this before, where there's a fair degree of consensus around the impact of regulation, and I mean consensus across different candidates and across different sectors, because this has come up at the IDA debate, or the IFA debate, sorry. And it also comes up for me as a social worker in the social work profession, and it comes up in the community and voluntary sector as well, around kind of compliance and governance and the impact of regulation. And it came up at the IBEC debate as well in terms of the impact on business, right? So the purpose of regulation is to make things better, to achieve a positive outcome for the citizen, for society, and for the end user of whatever it is that's been regulated. But sometimes it can become a bit of an industry in itself. The regulation can kind of go beyond its mission, its brief, or it can just become excessively bureaucratic. So I think what we just need to do at EU level and at government level and at local government level is check, constantly check to make sure that the regulation has not gone beyond its scope, that it makes sense, and that it's manageable for the person or entity or company being regulated to be supported to be compliant, and that we keep to the task that is making things better for the end user. And I think that comes across multiple sectors. And I think in my experience in my sector, what I've been involved in is supporting people to be compliant in a positive and empowering way, but also identifying upwards to the regulator when actually there are problems with the practice or methodology of regulation.
Okay, Margaret Maguire, in relation to Irish neutrality, a number of people messaging in wanting the panel's views in relation to that. There's been a bit of controversy, obviously, because the Taoiseach told the Dáil in the last couple of weeks that government legislation addressing the triple lock on the deployment of defence forces overseas will absolutely protect Ireland's neutrality. There are others that believe that is not going to be the case. And of course, we have taken particular stands on quite a number of issues. In terms of our neutrality for what it is, do you have concerns about us remaining a neutral country in as much as we are?
Absolutely, major concerns. Micheál Martin in particular seems to be massively keen on just basically just grandstanding regarding things that have got absolutely nothing to do with us. And he's breaching our neutrality. He's standing with Palestine. He's standing with Ukraine. There's aid going to, there's non-lethal military aid going to Ukraine. They are not the actions of a neutral country. If we're neutral, we're in a unique position in the world, whereby we've brokered a peace deal with the UK that went, that we all know the history. But so we're in a unique position that we can be peacemakers. Instead of that, we seem to be prodding and taking sides. And opinion poll after opinion poll has told these people that the majority of the people within this republic want to remain neutral. And that would be my stance. And absolutely, we should not be commenting on any wars throughout the world.
So do you think that like it shouldn't be the position of a government then to say, for instance, condemn Russia's actions in the Ukraine? You believe that should not a government shouldn't take that position, like our government? Sorry.
Well, okay. So if you condemn Russia's actions, what about Ukraine's actions? So you're taking a side, aren't you? Do you know what I mean? There's an argument to say that there's been a war in Ukraine since 2014, whereby, ethnic Russians were being persecuted. There's lots going on with regards to that. But, where was the comment about that?
Pauline O'Reilly, have you any concerns about the moves the government are making to remove the triple lock, and I suppose maybe even pressure from the EU for us to contribute more in this area?
I just think it's really important to state that being militarily neutral is not the same thing as being neutral as to what's right or wrong. We always have to stand on the side of what is right. And therefore, it is the right thing to do to stand up against Russia. It is the right thing to do to stand with the people of Palestine. And in fact, I personally negotiated for the recognition of Palestine to be put into the programme for government because I was the Green Party negotiator for foreign affairs. And I believe that the Irish people are behind the actions taken this week.
But who decides, Pauline, who decides for us that in one instant Israel is the aggressor, and in the other it's Russia, and it's not Ukraine or it's not Palestine, if you know what I mean. Like, who's guiding our moral compass in that regard? Because it's not always necessarily reflective of the people's points of view.
Well, I think in this case it is reflective, and we are public representatives. And it is, everybody's going to have a decision now as to who they vote for, and that's democracy. And they can vote for people, who hold the same views as Margaret, as Gerry, as Fergal, or myself. And it's up to them. That's what we're doing on these debates. And I believe that it is the right thing to do to stand with Palestine. It's also the right thing to do to call out the actions of Hamas on the 7th of October. But that doesn't mean that we stand by and watch genocide. But recognition of a state is respect. There's also recognition there for the state of Israel. But up to now, we have had an occupation for 57 years of the state of Palestine, and I've met with the ambassador.
But just in terms of, just to tease out the views, okay, and I'm not, there's some things people can say you need balance in. I'm not trying to strike a balance here or equate things, but like there is an argument, though, is there not, that in the timing of our recognition or our commitment to recognise Palestine as a state, that it does reward the actions of the likes of October 7th. Yes, it might come now, but Israel's very much of the opinion that the timing of it provides cover for Hamas and their awful actions in Israel early October.
We can't allow the citizens of a state to suffer and not recognise their state on the basis that we don't agree with their leadership. I mean, we never do that. Like that's just not part of the system of global governance, and we don't do that for any other state. I don't know why we would take that approach with Palestine. I think that there are even sitting MEPs who have questions to answer in relation to not calling out Russia or support
Irish MEPs.
Yes,
I do.
And I look
at the Mick Wallace and Claire Daly. Is that the people you're referencing?
People aren't here to defend themselves,
Understood.
I guess, against any charges. So I just like to be careful with that. But what I do think is
it just casts a cloud over everybody.
Well, I'm not casting a cloud over everybody. The vast majority aren't. But I think that my point here is people really need to understand what they're voting for, and don't know what you're voting for, then really interrogate the information, see how people
and the reason
that's really my message, I guess.
We invited every single candidate on, some refused or didn't, because I've got a great deal of faith in the public to be able to do precisely what you're saying, even if some people's views are repulsive to others and vice versa. Gerry Waters, are you concerned that for what it is, Ireland is losing what people perceive its neutral status to be?
Absolutely. It's terrifying to think that these people will actually sell out our neutrality. Our neutrality is vital to the Irish, not only the Irish people, but the Irish diaspora. There's 59 million people in America associate themselves with Ireland. So as the island of saints and scholars, we are expected to lead the world in morality and ethics. The problem with the Israeli-Palestinian problem is that there is a massive religious and ideological divide between those two groups of people. And nobody can understand what's going on unless they've read the basis of these divides. And the base for these divides are the holy books. The holy book, the Quran, should be read. I've read it 3 times. I read it in 1978, I read it in 2001, and I'm reading it a 3rd time at the moment. It's hugely important to understand what's going on, to understand the ideologies between different groups of people. As for the Ukrainian situation, up to the Maidan revolution, that was financed, according to Victoria Newland herself, to the tune of 5 billion when she was out handing out cakes at the Maidan revolution. The Ukraine was known as one of the most corrupt countries in Europe, if not the world. It was very much based, the people that took over in the Maidan revolution took over, they were known as Nazis. They're the remnants of the Nazi parties. And now suddenly they have been switched to being the victims. I don't remember that prior to the to Russia moving in with a special military operation, that there was a constant bombing and 14,000 constant artillery barrage of the Lugansk and Donbass area. Both of these areas were under constant military barrage. 14,000 people lost their lives in the 8 years. I'm not justifying the Russian invasion, but the ethnic Russians were being wiped out
Yes,
in
okay.
the area. And this is a fact.
And just as
So
it relates to well, Ukraine's not in Europe, but as it relates to the corruption, that was
well,
one.
it
That,
will be. It will
yeah,
be.
but,
If some
but just
of the
to your point, that
politicians have their way.
one of the reasons it hasn't joined Europe to this point was because of Brussels' concerns of the corruption within the country. So
that's right.
That is, yeah. Fergal, Landy.
Thanks, Greg. Yeah, I mean, look, I think what's important here is the people of Ireland and people of the world being able to have confidence in the consistent application of international law. And I think we can play a role in relation to that by remaining fully militarily neutral, but politically influential.
So just in relation to that, so back at the time of the Second World War, I'm sure most of you are aware that British planes, Allied planes, were allowed to fly over Donegal. We allowed that so they could bomb U-boats in the waters off the west coast of Ireland, rather than having to fly up and over Malin from Enniskillen. So in that context, really, have we ever really been militarily neutral?
Look, I'm not a historian. I think maybe we've always
the use of Shannon would be another example where you could
Shannon
sort of
currently,
say,
I think it's a more more current example. I would be in favor of complete neutrality. I'm not in favor of US troops using Shannon. I think our power, right? We're never going to be a military powerhouse. We're never going to actually make a meaningful difference in defense in that sense. What we can do is make a really meaningful contribution to diplomacy and international
so
law.
With that, and sorry to cut across you, but it's an interesting point, Fergal. I want to fully understand it. So it would sound to me then, do you think it was an overstep from the Irish government and their commentary this week in recognising or committing to recognise Palestine as a state?
Oh, I mean, I'd be extremely frustrated that we didn't do that an awful long time ago. We should have done that previously, and we should have passed the Occupied Territories Bill previously. And I mean, ultimately, what's kind of been overlooked in maybe some of the symbolic actions that the current Irish government have taken is that, you know, they didn't do those things previously. They didn't recognize the Palestinian state earlier, and they haven't passed the Occupied Territories Bill. And ultimately, they are part of, bringing this back to Europe, Fine Gael are part of the EPP and are participating in supporting and retaining Ursula von der Leyen. And I think the Midlands Northwest needs an MEP who will actually oppose Ursula von der Leyen. So, you know, there's no point taking certain actions on the one hand, and then on the other hand, preserving ultimately the status quo.
Margaret, did you want to come back in at all on that issue, just conscious of the time people are taking?
Just a last note on that. I do actually believe that this government has gone rogue on the neutrality. I think that they should listen to the people, and, you know, large swathes of opinion polls have told them that people don't want to be politically involved in the conflicts in other countries. We want to be politically neutral as well as militarily neutral, and neither of those things are happening at this moment in time.
A couple of people, Gerry Waters, asking if you are pro-Europe or anti-Europe, because there are a number of candidates that are looking to get elected sort of with a view to, you know, in time, Ireland leaving the EU or bringing down the EU as a whole.
I'm very much pro-Europe as a economic entity, one in which we have to be a member of a large economic bloc. I don't like the idea that they actually are making the laws for us. I object to the all our laws, or what is it, 78 or 79% of our laws are actually coming from Europe. I object to that. I think Europe is in the course of shooting itself in the face through their they have actually managed, through the economic sanctions against Russia and China, and in fact the BRICS countries. I think Europe have got, by going along with America, which in fact they're only a vassal state of, have managed to shoot themselves and destroy themselves. I would hope to go to Europe to try and rectify that. And I think most people now know that I'm capable of making my point, that I have the knowledge and the history to be able to carry and debate with anybody on any subject.
Margaret Maguire, are you pro-Europe?
I would look for reform within the EU. I personally don't think the EU is going to last another decade, but I don't think it's going to be us that are going to bring it down. However,
do you not think that maybe the British experience of trying to, or not trying to, successfully leaving the EU would serve as a warning to other countries not to do so? Was that not the best thing happened to the Union? Britain making such a, I was going to say...
Okay, well, why would they make it deliberately difficult for a democratic vote to leave? Why would they make it so difficult to kind of scare other countries off leaving? Does that make a democratic union? It doesn't, does it? You know, it kind of, that in essence is an advertisement to leave the EU.
Fergal, Landy, do you like Europe in its current form? Would you go over there to work as part of you know, the institutions, and do you believe that that's the best way to improve the situation for Ireland?
Absolutely. I think it's kind of funny, like hearing this kind of isolationist idea. I mean, this is a country where St. Brendan travelled across the Atlantic before Columbus. Daniel O'Connell was extremely influential in the American abolitionist movement and brought Frederick Douglass to tour rural Ireland back and ultimately contributed to the abolition of slavery. And James Connolly, as a trade unionist and labour man before the foundation of this state, was involved in an internationalist approach to workers' rights. So, like, you know, I think how people are perceiving a large-scale project like the European Union and blaming the European Union all the time. What I tried to describe that as, you're looking at a pyramid, and you're looking at the top of the pyramid and you're giving out about it. The reason that we have some frustration and sometimes a sense of alienation from the European Union has ironically got absolutely nothing to do with the European Union. It's got to do with a democratic deficit in local government. So Donegal County Council is where we need to restore power, restore decision-making, meaningful participatory decision-making for the people of Donegal. And that then gets added value from national government, not getting in the way, not obfuscating or frustrating, but adding value. Yeah. And then ultimately from the EU and indeed from the UN.
National government takes credit for good decisions Europe makes and blames Europe for bad decisions, in my experience. So maybe they need to be working off the same hymn sheet.
The decision should be made in local government, and then it should be aided.
Unfortunately, we're taking power. Yeah, but we've taken power, centralising power from local government. Pauline O'Reilly, just to that point and a broader point before we move on to our final topic, with sitting in this chair and speaking to people and going to events, the overwhelming emotion I get as it relates to Europe from people, and I could be wrong, is not frustration or support or anger. It's actually apathy.
Yeah, I'd agree with you there, Greg. And I think just to put to the point about local government, I've been a local councillor. I know exactly the frustrations, and we are the country in Europe with the weakest local government in terms of the amount of powers that have been stripped away from local democracy. And I think that absolutely, it's certainly a priority for us in the Green Party, that you have decision making at the lowest effective level, so closest to where the people are and how they live their lives. When it comes to Europe, I think an awful lot of the advances, particularly in equality for women, have come from us being part of a more outward looking country that works with others, and including legislation. And the most recent being about pay transparency, and you know, how much women are paid compared to how much men. All of these things are really positive in terms of leave, and then we can add more to those directives. So actually we had a directive around leave, and what we did was to add in domestic violence leave, where that didn't come from Europe. So I would argue that, you know, sending people who are strong negotiators on our behalf to Europe, we can actually then enhance the directives before they go to countries. And there are many, many countries that I have huge concerns with in terms of their records and equality, their records in relation to reproductive rights, for instance, and that they are slipping down the
Yeah.
chart in terms of women's rights. And I think that we can actually do something that is very positive for others
Okay.
outside of Ireland. And I think that's a good thing. So
Yep.
actually, it flows both ways.
I get you. Okay, we've heard sort of an overview there. I'll stay with you. Migration obviously is a massive issue. And we have the EU Migration Pact, which we've yet to adopt, but it looks like we will. I'll stay with you and then work up my screen just to try and start and finish with different people at different times. Do you believe the Migration Pact is good for Ireland? Do you think we were right to sign up for it? Pauline?
Yeah, well, look, as the European Greens, we have, as I said, a strong kind of cohesive group in the Parliament where we negotiate within ourselves first, and then vote on different issues. And we try to negotiate then with other groups to try and get a strong result. Now, we were not, as a European Greens party, we were not happy with the text. It didn't go far enough as far as we were concerned to support the most vulnerable. It didn't include things, for instance, like search and rescue, where we know that there are people dying in the Mediterranean trying to get to Europe. It puts in no protections around that.
But into the 4 pillars that are there, Pauline, sorry to cut across, we're heading towards the end of the programme. You support the 4 pillars and what their aim is?
What I support is Ireland signing up because it's a baseline, but we will have to step above that in terms of making sure that people's rights are protected. But ultimately, migration is a positive thing. There's very little in that pact about migration. It's a lot of it is about asylum. And I think one of the really positive things, and NGOs are supportive of this, maybe we want more to be in there, is that there would be a 6-month limit in terms of how fast people get a decision on whether they can stay or not stay.
But how can we just in relation to that, and you're not here to defend the government, if we can't do that already, why would you actually need another layer of another? We are already not. Everyone will concede that we aren't actually processing people as effectively, you say. So why sign up to a pact? And that's one of the promises of it. Surely we should be doing that already. If the will is there.
As you say, I'm not here to defend, Minister Helen McEntee's, and it is under her brief in relation to this process. But I know that there has been a doubling of people hired in the International Protection Office. And we now have the first centres, which would be public centres, rather than, handing money over to B&Bs and so on.
Okay.
That actually, so there are moves being made, but we need to hold governments to account on that. And that's not just this government, that's future governments, to make sure that the time limit is brought down. It has been brought down, but we do need to reduce that even further.
Okay,
so
but even when we're running the time, we're not
decision.
actually returning people back either. We're asking them to leave. So that's also something within the EU Migration Pact that would be introduced. But we're not. We could currently do it already, but we aren't, and we're blaming COVID, and then we're blaming a High Court decision that didn't happen until March of this year. But again, you're not here to defend the government. I'm just putting the facts out there. Margaret Maguire, are you in favour of the EU Migration Pact? If not, which I suspect you may not be, why not?
Yeah. Well, absolutely not. No, I mean, currently we can legislate to reform the asylum system, whichever way we decide to reform it. We can adopt a Denmark type approach. We can limit the numbers coming in. We can deport. We can deem countries safe, whereby we absolutely don't take applications from those countries. On signature or on opting in of this EU Migration Pact, that all finishes. It's all dictated. It's another thing that's dictated to us by Brussels. It's dictated how many we take, where we take them from, what countries we can take them from. They have to have a minimum level of accommodation, healthcare, third level education. So all these things are going to be dictated to us from Brussels you know, and this is on top of how many cattle we can have, how many fish we can take. You know, this is all centralized regulation, and it doesn't take into account the crisis within individual member states. For instance, you know, just the other day that a report came out, there is a deficit of 256,000 properties in this country. And regardless of that deficit, regardless of our housing crisis, any financial crisis we might have, any healthcare crisis, anything, we have to take these numbers, and these are dictated to us by Brussels. Now, Brussels doesn't have a history of doing Ireland any favours whatsoever. Look what they did to us with the banking crisis. Look what they've done to us with the fishing, with the farming, that they are absolutely not going to do us any favours. We need to manage our own borders. And this was agreed in 2009 under the Lisbon Treaty. And I believe that opting in is absolutely, it's just breaching the agreement that the Irish people agreed with the Lisbon Treaty.
But so
That's
just in relation to that, right? I mean, we freely move around the place. There's a significant homeless problem in Australia, for an example. It's actually peaked far higher than it should ever be. So realistically, then, we shouldn't be travelling over there and taking up units of accommodation until such time as they have their homeless crisis resolved. I know the argument will be made there, but yeah, we go over and we contribute and all that type of stuff. But just if we adopt that whereby no one moves anywhere until everywhere in the place that we're moving to is satisfied, there'll be no movement of people whatsoever.
No, I agree with you, but I would say that is up to the Australian government, you know, and we apply. If we want to go to Australia, we apply, and we're either told yes or we're told no, and we comply with that.
I suppose that's what people would say the Migration Pact promises.
Sorry?
That's what the Migration Pact promises, whether it's delivered or not, that people apply and we decide.
Well, but the thing is that there's going to be an amount that we have to take every year, and that amount is estimated at 30,000 a year, which is more than what we took last year.
That's not that. And the figures are questionable. It's around an extra 700, but that's based on us taking in around about 13,000. But the government's already conceded we're actually going to probably take in 22,000. Yes. I don't know what that does to the 700 figure. That's not clear. But I do take your point. And I'm just going to... Fergal, I can't presume what your opinion is, but Fergal, Landy, I'll come to you on this first and then go to Dr. Gerry Waters. Fergal, Landy.
On the migration piece, I suppose, I think I'd like to just address it very quickly on two levels. So we've talked about there on the kind of international level and the EU level. Again, there's this kind of idea of some sort of isolationist approach. I mean, we engage with the EU across the board. We have the benefit of the single market. We have cultural benefits, social benefits, and economic benefits. And as part of that, it's the political vision should be and can be one of solidarity, democracy, and international law. So we can't pick and choose which bits we'd like to benefit from and which bits we want nothing to do with. And so I think it is beneficial that we would address.
There, but that's exactly what we have.
I'm not going to do I'm not going to do the typical. Exactly I didn't interrupt you.
No, I understand that.
No, yeah. So can I finish my point, because I didn't interrupt you. So I'll finish my point, and then maybe if Greg wants to bring you back in, he can bring you back in. So to finish my point, what I'm saying is, I think it is right. It is a global issue, really, migration and movement of people, and it is correct that we would cooperate with others. I would share Pauline's concerns about, again, it goes back to the implementation. It's like I said with regulation, how that gets implemented is important. So I think it's really important that the pact is implemented in a way that is 100% human rights compliant and is fair and just. And we cannot.
Do you have any concern about us? Do you have any concern about us about conceding decision-making powers? You know, Greece is overwhelmed, they would say. Ireland, if you look at it, there's a lot of people think we take in too many, right? I'm not saying that's the case, but statistically our proportion is actually much lower than we possibly should be taking in. So do you not think there is an argument, like Margaret made, that we can have some better control over that?
My concern is not about us ceding power, or my concern is not about us taking too much. My concern is about us participating in a Europe whereby if people don't vote in a certain way on the 7th of June in the European elections, and how people vote domestically in their own countries, which is a real key thing, that we could end up participating in a Europe that's actually driven by far-right governments trying to implement a fortress Europe type approach with people in detention at the borders.
And there's
that's
no
what I don't want
secret.
to be
There's no
part of.
secret in that some people are standing actually on that platform to join that group of people to
I'm
to
standing
that end.
against that approach.
Okay, and that's clear. Dr. Gerry Waters, thanks for your patience. Final word to you on this, unless you say something incredibly offensive to someone, and I'll have to give them a right to reply.
Well, far be it from me to be offensive to anybody. I only attack when I'm attacked. Initially, it's kind of like John Rambo. If they try to draw first blood.
Okay,
then
well, no,
see what happens.
well, we're
So-
okay then.
So
Go
what
ahead.
I'm saying to you is, I, as a doctor for 47 years, had a great relationship with African and Eastern European patients. In fact, one patient once said to me, my waiting room was like Entebbe Airport. I had a great relationship, and I have a great welcome for people coming in from all over the world. And I love the concept of people coming in and participating and working. And once they've got a strong work ethic, I am thrilled to have them here. I have no idea why the government is bringing in all these young men. I can't help but feel that it is provocation. I can't help but feel that it is an attempt on the part of the government parties to divide the people and to frighten the people, because this is how governments work. They work on fear and anxiety. And to hear the representatives of the political party saying, here, I'm not here to defend the government. If you're standing on a ticket, a Labour ticket or a Green ticket or a Fianna Fáil or a Fine Gael ticket, and you have your thousands and thousands of posters festooning the roads, well, then you are there to defend the parties. That is the reality. What's happening? I don't know why the governments are bringing in these young men, and I have no idea, and I'm not going to propose what they're here for, but there is something very, very insidious going on, and that frightens me.
Okay.
Because I don't trust governments.
Listen, thank you very much indeed, all four of you. I do really appreciate your time. I know it's a little unconventional doing it remotely, but I appreciate you.
It was brilliant.
Yeah, okay, I appreciate your involvement. Dr.
Yes,
Gerry
thank you.
Waters, Independent, Margaret Maguire, Ireland First, Fergal Landy, the Labour Party, Pauline O'Reilly, the Green Party. Nina Carberry was invited to Fine Gael, but not canvassing in this area. Right, all four of you, best of luck. Hopefully everyone gets out and vote, and people have been better informed, I think, which way to vote today. Thank you very much. Take care of yourselves.
Incidentally, I'm in Letterkenny
Thank you.
tomorrow. I'm in Letterkenny tomorrow giving a talk.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you. And that's where we conclude our EU debates. We spoke to all of them, all 27 candidates. We didn't speak to all of them. We invited them all. I think we missed 3 or 4. But as I say, or maybe 5. But anyway, everyone got a right to have a say. We are now focusing solely in terms of our debates on local elections, and we have 5 for you next week. In fact, 6 really, because we're splitting Carndonna into 2 on Tuesday. So stay tuned for that. Thank you for all your support. Thanks for all your views, your comments, your clicks. We'll chat to you Monday. Have a great weekend on the